not harm you, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from harm. He will watch you over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. So as I have read that, that's exactly where I get my strength from. And over the years, you wouldn't believe it, but when I first, I would say right up to the age of about 25, I was incredibly reserved and shy. I didn't want to talk to anyone or anything like that. But through the years and through God's help, He's just given me the ability to be able to stand up and talk before you and other groups that I've done that in the past. So I just praise God for that. I thought what I would do, first of all, is just give you a bit of history, because the Aubrey family have travelled all over the country. I was born in 1945 in the mother city, a beautiful city. And we were there for 4 years. And then my dad got transferred to Johannesburg. And we lived in a suburb called Craig Hall. And for those of you who know Johannesburg well, what I wanted to say to you was that the bridge from Craig Hall into Bordeaux was just open felt. There was absolutely no development. So Johannesburg actually ended in Craig Hall. And so my parents decided that they would like to send me to St. Stithians College. And I went there in 1953. I was a foundation member. I was in grade 2, and I went through until midway of standard 6. It was an interesting school. In those days, we were really in the Gamadulas, we had trees all around us. There was only one building for the classrooms and where the headmaster were and the administration. We had a chapel, and then there were 2 boarding houses, Collins and Stevens, and a dining hall in the middle. So it was very small, and it was really very countrified. Today, I haven't been back there for a long time, but I gather it's a completely different kettle of fish there nowadays. But anyway, that's where I did my junior schooling. I enjoyed it. I excelled in cricket there. I was a leg spin bowler, which I really enjoyed, and had great fun there. But I must admit that my skills, when I say were limited, they weren't limited, but I didn't pay too much attention to it, so I didn't really excel in what I was doing. Anyway, we enjoyed it, and we enjoyed the experience of being in Johannesburg. And then in July of 59, my dad, who was a sales manager for Reckitt, he was transferred up to Salisbury, Southern Rhodesia in 59. And we went up there, a completely new experience for us. And really, we settled down very well there. And my parents built a really nice house in Mount Pleasant. And I went to Mount Pleasant Boys High, which was about 3 kilometers from the school. So I used to ride there. So that was great and easy for me. And when we were there, I must make it very clear that I come from a godly parenthood. We certainly, there was no Christianity at that stage, but my parents were very godly. And we used to go to Avondale Anglican Church, and I used to enjoy it. I don't know what it was about But one thing that I learned when I was at the church was how to pray. And at an early age, I started praying, and I used to get on my knees every night and pray. I kept that up right the way through, which was really good. And then when I finished school in '63, I had a year at Polytech, and then I managed to get into Natal University in Durban and enrolled on a BCom degree. And I was there from '65 to '67, and I did my BCom there. In my final year, I failed my optional subject, which was auditing, and I was very fortunate there. The university saw what my record was, attendance-wise and work-wise, when I was at university, and they said there was no need for me to go back to university, and as long as I passed at the end of '68, I would get my BCom. Well, I made sure that I got that, so I got my BCom. But in the interim, I'd met the love of my life in August of '68, sorry. And we fell for one another, and yeah, we went out right from the word go. She came from a farming community in Heimville, in Natalia, and she asked me to go with her in that December to the farm to meet her parents and her siblings, which we did, and I really got on well with them. And just very fast forward, we got engaged at the end of March, and I remember so clearly, in that time, I was doing my CA, the English system, which was different to South Africa, where you do intermediate, final part 1 and final part 2. And I managed to write the intermediate in the February of that first year, and I got through that, thank goodness. I had that under my belt. Anyway, Noline's father, he was a wonderful farmer, and he had wrists like this. He was a proper strong farmer, and he said to me, "John, when are you going to get married?" Oh, I said, Noline was earning a pittance as a nursing sister, and I was getting even worse as an article clerk. And he said to me, "John, it'll do Noline no harm to go without. If you love one another, get married." So we got married on the 8th of November that year, and it was also a great present to me because in the September I wrote my final part 1 for my CA, and I passed it. So in a space of a year, I'd got my BCom and the first 2 exams of my CA, which was fantastic. Anyway, we settled down, and we had our first child in 1970, a son, Andrew, and then 2 years later we had Bronwyn, our daughter, and then at the beginning of '75 we had David, our son. And so we were so busy in those times. We built a house there, and unfortunately we didn't pay much attention to going to church or anything like that. But anyway, we got on with everything. And when I qualified on my 3rd attempt in 1973, I was absolutely overjoyed that I'd got through my CA, and And before I wrote the exam, I thought, it's ridiculous. Here I am. I'm going to be no different once I've written the exam. And little did I realize just how important it was to get that certificate. So fortunately I got it, and that was the start of my career. I had no desire to be in the profession, although while I was still working for one of the accounting companies up there, a partner of Price Waterhouse, where I'd done my articles, and his friend, who was the group internal auditor for TA Holdings, which was the biggest quoted company in Rhodesia at that time. They came along and said, "John, we want to put you forward as the group internal auditor." And I said, "Oh, I can't do that. I haven't." And they said, "Listen, you've got the ability, you've proved it, and we know that you'll do well." Anyway, I went with them, and I became the group internal auditor and, manager. And the TA Holdings was based on a tobacco floor, and they then had all sorts of different franchise. They had a motor franchise, they had white goods, they had a hotel, they had insurance, they had a finance house, and there was a lot for us to go and check on. So yeah, it was good experience while I was there. From my own point of view, it was a very worthwhile job. I got a company car, and I was really in the pound seats. We lived like kings, and all went well. I just loved Rhodesia, absolutely loved Rhodesia. But at that time, there was great political turmoil in the country, and Ian Smith had been negotiating with Joshua and Koma, and unfortunately those talks fell through. Joshua and Koma, just for your information, he was the Matabele, and he would have been the best bet. But I think Mugabe had already got his claws into the situation, so that's why it all collapsed. And when it collapsed at the beginning of 76, I just said to Nolene, I said, "The time's come. I don't see any future in the country here at all, and I need, for my own sake, I need to go into an environment where I can get to know how to use computers, and so I said, I'm going to go for it." And it was an amazing thing, because I wasn't a committed Christian at that point in time, but as I said, I was a great prayer. And I prayed about it, and I had major obstacles that had to be confronted. So in the February, I went and saw my boss, and he was very understanding, and he said, he respected my decision to move off. And I had a job until such time as we were going to leave. And he said, "When do you think you're going to leave?" I said, "Well, I think we'll leave end of June." And then we had to sell the house, and that was a bit of a trauma. And then at that time, the Southern Rhodesia had been put onto a war footing. So I hadn't gone to the army because they had found that I wasn't suitable to go into active service. So I could be called up to do admin and that sort of thing. And blow me down, a so-called friend of mine, he went in, and he was working in the army offices, and he found my file and put it at the top. And the next thing I got call-up papers. But at that time, I'd been for interviews in South Africa. And they said, "Well, the only thing that you can do now is to go before the Army Exemption Board." And I must say, I went with trepidation because there all these big knobs were, and I thought, jeepers, they're going to give me a hard time. They cross-examined me. They looked at my passport to see what I'd said. And they said, at the end, they just said, there's no doubt that this man wants to leave, and we won't stand in his way. So they actually gave me leave to leave the country, and it was unbelievable, because they said, when are you going to go? I said, the end of June. And they gave me 10 days to be out of the country. They said, if you're not out by the 10th of July, you're going to be called up again. Fortunately, we had booked our flight out on the 4th of July, so we were out, but you won't believe it. I actually got call-up papers, but I was out of the country by then. But what I wanted to say is, although I wasn't a committed Christian, I prayed and prayed, and God really came to the fore in that time, which was fantastic. And anyway, we moved to South Africa, and it was quite with a wife and 3 children, and it was quite a thing setting things up. But we did set everything up, and I had a disaster first job, and then I settled into another job. But in that time, my wife Nolene had a cousin, and they were Australian, and they had come to Johannesburg to set up the Wycliffe office. And so we got to know them well, and we used to go and have dinner, and they used to come to us. But what I wanted to say to you was that was really where my walk started, because Tony Williams, he was an engineer, very energetic. He loved mountaineering. He came from New Zealand, and he had a mountaineering accident, and at the age of 18 became a paraplegic. And that guy, I can still see him now. Just wonderful man. Nothing stood in his way. He used to drive his car. He used to go shopping. He was able to maneuver his wheelchair and get out of the car and that sort of thing. And he never complained. He was one of these people who never complained about his situation. But where the impact came was with me. We'd go there, and I'd talk to him. And all I can say to you, I can see it right now, his face just shone Jesus. And I used to listen to him and that sort of thing. And he was such an encouragement to me, and he really made me start thinking about giving my life to the Lord. And we went away on holiday at the end of 1977, and he said to me, John, there are 3 books I want you to take and read. And being a typical accountant, the last thing I want to do is read books. So anyway, I read these 3 books. I was very taken by them. The one was about a chap who had been had up, and he was on criminal charges and in jail, and how he turned to the Lord and actually accepted the Lord in jail. And this impacted on me incredibly. And when we got back from holiday, we had friends staying at Midmar. The son was at school with me in Salisbury, and he had recently become an Anglican pastor. And he said to me, John, I told him my whole situation. He said, well, let's go to the tent and I'll lead you to the Lord. And I said, no, John, I'm not prepared to do that. If I'm going to do this, I've got to do it properly. I've got to be convinced it's the right thing, and there's no ifs or buts. When I do it, I do it. And so in February of 78, Nalene joined me and we accepted the Lord into our lives, which was fantastic. And yeah, all I can say, ever since then, it's just been growth after growth. I realize that you learn every day something new. And I must say that when I go to David's Bible study, I'm just blown over by the detail that he comes up with. But the Bible is so powerful. The Bible is really the our manual for good living and the future. So I did that, and we were still living in Johannesburg, and I used to go. I worked for a mining company in Johannesburg in the centre, and Anglo-American used to have a monthly meeting where you'd get Christian speakers to come, and it was just amazing. I never used to miss, and there's one story that has stuck with me forever. The then Methodist head was Peter Story, and he had been in Johannesburg, I think, about 20 years, and he had got to know all the big knobs in Johannesburg. And it was just absolutely amazing just to listen to what he had to say to them. And he said, you know, the sad thing about those guys, they've made it, they've got the power, they've got everything, they've got all the money they like. They think that giving money to their wives is the be-all and end-all. But he said that was their life. Their life was work. Their life was money. And he used an example. He said, if you go to the Carlton Centre in Johannesburg, it was like one of these guys jumping off a building, and that was it. There was nothing left in his life. And I just realized that, you know, in life you've got to balance your life, your work and your family and that. And so that was what I tried to do right the way through, is to have a good balance between work ethic and my family. So from there, I'd always been very keen on going farming, and my brother-in-law up in Heimville had a big farm, and we spoke, and he said, John, I can't possibly pay you what you would want. And I said, no, well, I'm not looking for that. Anyway, I ended up going there, and I must say I hated getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to the dairy and to be part of that. But obviously being an accountant, I did the books, I did the tax, and he had a sawmill which I ran, which was really good. But it was fortuitous and was obviously all part of God's plan that my wife, Nalene, fell. She was one day just doing this on her neck. This is in 1990, and she could feel these lumps. And she thought, oh, there's nothing to it. Anyway, I took her to see a specialist, and they actually cut these lumps out and they sent it for analysis. And I still remember it clearly, going in to hear the results. Nalene was in bed and the specialist came in and he said, I'm afraid I've got bad news. He said, those lumps are cancer. And he said, not only have you got breast cancer, you've got lymphoma cancer, and you're stage 4. And as I left to go and phone our mothers, as I walked down to the centre where the sisters were, it just came upon me, we've got to pray. So when I got to them, I told the mothers, and I said, for goodness sake, let's just spread the word to pray for Nalene. And she had 6 months of real, when I look at it, she had real chemotherapy. They used to call it the Red Devil. It was a sinister, burnt orange thing that went into her, and then she had to stay in hospital 5 days to have recovery, to water it down. And I said to Dr. Duckworth, the oncologist, I said, why is that? He said, John, that goes throughout your body and kills every cell. And if you don't have a rescue, she'll bleed to death. So she used to have 25 litres of, I suppose it was like a purified water that was pumped into her. And then she had another treatment where we had to be careful of her heart. Anyway, I'm not going to go right through that whole thing. She went through it. She got shingles. There were things that came in the end of it. She went to Durban and had cobalt, and then she went and had her scan, and her scan showed that she was clear. And she said to the oncologist, I want to hear first about whether I'm clear or not. Anyway, that's exactly what happened. The guy in the laboratory said, Mrs. Aubrey, from the top of your head to the tip of your toe, you clear. And I just praise the Lord, because Nolene had had a miracle healing, although she'd had to go through the treatment. And to this day, 33 years later, she's never had any more cancer. So we just praise the Lord for that. So it was fortuitous. We were on the farm. She had a wonderful place to recover. And then I realized after 3 or 4 years that I need to get back into business. And so I left at the end of June of 94, and I'd been left some money, and I said to Nolene, we're going to travel the world. So she and I went and we travelled the UK from the top to the bottom, went to Wales, Scotland, everywhere with our younger son, and we had a wonderful time. And then the other 2 children joined us, and we flew into America. And we had 7 weeks of just flying all over. I bought Delta tickets for $500 each, and that allowed us to fly anywhere 24 hours a day. So we went all over the States. But I can't go into detail on that, but at the end of it, we were in Seattle, and I was looking forward to visiting the Boeing factory. And on the Sunday, we had friends from Vancouver come and see us, and they just took us around. And that day, I just couldn't stop weeing. But I never weed much. Anyway, I felt feverish, got back to the motel we were staying in, and that night I said to Nolene about 9, I'm getting into bed. And, I can't tell you. I'd been in bed about half an hour, and I had this rigor, and I just shook. I couldn't control myself. And it carried on, and I said to our boys, go to the motel reception and see if you can get 911 to come. Anyway, they did. They were there within 20 minutes. They looked at me and they said, no, you've got to go to hospital. And so I was rushed off to hospital. And they just said to me, fortunately on the second day that I was there, they put a catheter up, and what a relief that was. And they said to me, listen, it's going to be exorbitant to have an operation in America. You need to go back to South Africa, which I did. Flew back with the catheter, and I had an operation when I got back here. And what had happened, that an abscess had formed on my urethra. And but during all this time, I must tell you, I was in deep prayer, because I really thought that I was going to die. And we were like 10,000 kilometers away from home. And I thought, what about my family? Anyway, we got through that, got back, and came back here. And and then I realized that I needed to get a job. So through a consultant in Durban, I got a phone call and said, listen, there's a place down in Ugi who are looking for a regional accountant. Would you be interested? I said, where's Ugi? And anyway, he told me, and I went down for the interview, got the job, and it went well. And while we were there, there was an old Anglican church in Ugi, and we went there a couple of times. And I said to Nalene, this is not on. And she said, well, there's a Baptist church in Maclear. And we went there. There were only about 30 to 40 people in the congregation, and it was very mixed races, but it was great. We really enjoyed it. And the pastor there, he fell in disrepute, and he was told to leave. And there we were left in the church with no pastor, nothing. And it was good, because it made us all get off our backsides and become active and go and play a part. And that really helped grow me even more as a Christian. And and then we moved. They moved me out of there. No, but what I was going to say, and I haven't got time to read it to you, but in Isaiah 41, I think it's 8 to 14, we went to see a Baptist couple. He was retired, and we went to Elliot, and the two ladies got chatting, so I was chatting to Graham, and he said, a strange thing happened this morning. He said, I was praying at 5 o'clock this morning, and I got a scripture, and I don't know what it's all about. And after I'd explained to him that I had a very difficult meeting in Maritzburg on the Monday, he said, I know what it is. And it was, and he read that scripture to me, 41, 8 to 15, I think, which was basically to say that I will be with you, and there is no one who can stand against you. And I just hung on that. I went to the meeting, and my worries were ill-founded. I got through the meeting, but it was just the power of prayer and also knowing that God was there. So that was fantastic. And then in 1999, my grandson is here. My daughter had her first son, and that was Carl, and she really battled with Carl, and at 25 weeks they thought she was going to actually have Carl. So Nalene went across. She was a qualified sister, and she went across, and I still believe to this day that Nalene was the one who helped her through that pregnancy. They managed to get to, I think, 34 weeks, and then Carl was born. But through absolute terrible medical malpractice, they left an instrument in Bron, and she got septicemia, and we really thought she was going to die. But Nalene was there to look after Carl, and wherever you are, Carl, he's a big strapping boy now, and he's a great asset to us, and we're very proud of him. Yeah, and then just very quickly, I was subject to a big political nonsense in Mondi, And it was amazing how it worked out. I'd been called into the GM's office after coming back from leave, and I couldn't understand what it was about. And he said, "John, you've lost your job." So I said, "What do you mean I've lost my job?" And I said, "On what basis have I lost my job?" He wouldn't discuss it with me. Anyway, I was without a job. I didn't know. I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" So he said, "We'll have to try and sort that out." And there was someone who came to our house. We had a beautiful house in Newgie, and he was a director of Mondi. And he phoned out of the blue at about an hour and a half after this had happened. And he said, "John, what's going on?" And I told him. He said, "I want to see you in the office, my office in Johannesburg at 8 this next Monday. Bring your CV and all that." Anyway, I went up, and there was... It backfired on this GM and the other people who were involved in it, but I just didn't want it to develop into something really nasty, so I just left it, and I ended up in internal audit, which wasn't what I wanted to do. But anyway, it was a job and took me through to retirement. But in that time, I'd moved to... We'd heard about Derek Stone, who was the pastor at the Howick Baptist Church. In those days, it was the Howick Baptist Church. And I got on really well with him. And after a year or so, I was brought onto the executive. I became the treasurer. And they had a whole lot of different ministries, and they were talking about getting a full-time administrator. And I said, "Well, I'm available." At the end of 2005, I'm out. And they appointed me, and I went in as administrator for 5 years. I really enjoyed it. It was an interesting thing. Everyone thinks everything flows smoothly in the church. It certainly doesn't. And anyway, it was a good experience, and I learned a lot while I was there. And then, I'm cutting some of it out because I see I'm about to run out of time. I had a real scare in December this last year. I was in the house, got up, and I couldn't stand properly. And I thought, "Gee, what's wrong with me?" Anyway, I put my hands out against the walls and that sort of thing. And I got to the entrance to the passage, and my legs literally collapsed on me. Absolutely collapsed. I didn't fall, I just went. They collapsed like that, and I went down. And I lay there for about an hour and a half. And then my grandson and his father and my son came, and they came and got me up. And the upshot of it was that I had septicemia, and I didn't realize until afterwards just how serious it was, that, you can die from septicemia. And it was just absolutely amazing. Once again, the prayer that I put in and how I recovered. And and then just the final thing, as I say, I've cut a few corners now. It was in 2002, September, our darling daughter, our beautiful daughter, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. She had to have the tumor cut out, and it came out successfully. They cut out a bigger section so there would be no cancer. But unfortunately, it just went from... Cancer is such a sinister thing. It jumps around and that sort of thing. Anyway, she, in the beginning of 23, she went in for another scan, and it was into her liver. And poor old Bron, she was a real fighter. She had chemo, she had radiation, she had operations. They had part of her liver cut out, and nothing seemed to work. And then in 24, she went back and she went on another course. And at the end of that, when they did the scan there, they found that she was just full of cancer in her lungs as well. Anyway, so it wasn't looking good. Obviously, all this time we'd been praying for a miracle healing, but we understand that there is always a reason for it, and we won't know what the actual reason was. It was sad for us. And then just towards the end of January, when she was in a really bad state, they had a double story, and she fell down the stairs and she broke her shoulder, and she cracked part of her skull, and she was in a and as a result of that, she really couldn't talk. So it was the beginning of the end, unfortunately. And Carl called us together because the oncologist had spoken to them and just said, I'm afraid it's the end. So the best thing for her is to go home, try to live as well as she can, but, basically saying that's it. And, Bron was a very determined and very strong person, and when she heard that, she said, I want to go home. They have a beautiful house in Ferncliff, and Steve, her husband, cleared out the playroom, and they made that like a nursing room. And Bron was there. She had 24-hour care, and what was wonderful about it was just for immediate family. And we cried together. We built each other up. We spoke to Bron. She couldn't talk back to us, but she heard what we were saying. We played songs to her. We read scripture to her and that. But it was just wonderful. In that 3 days that she was at home, I think the Shaws and the Aubreys, really bonded very strongly. And it was sad. It was sad when I wasn't in the room at the time, but I was just in the next room. I came through and she had died. And I just kissed her on her forehead, and I just said to the family, this is your mother's broken body. She's gone. In a nanosecond, she was with Jesus. And that's what we rejoice for. And that, although it was hard and sad for us, we were pleased for her because her body was finished. So, we were pleased for that. And just to end off on, just to say that I was really proud of our grandchildren, Carl, Kaylee, Sven, and Chase, all different ages. They wrote their own tributes to their mum. Wonderful tributes, absolutely wonderful. And on the on the Friday morning before the service, they just practiced and I listened and that sort of thing. And in the afternoon when we had the service, I was so proud of them. They went up one by one and they gave their wonderful tributes to their mum. So Bron had left a wonderful legacy to their children, and Steve made a really good speech as well. So it was sad. There's no way of getting away from it. We had lost our one and only daughter, but we knew that she was safe in the hands of Jesus, and that was the main thing. So with that, I just wanted to end by saying one of my favorite scriptures is 1 Corinthians 2:9, and it goes like this. It is written, the eye has not seen, the ear has not heard, the mind has not conceived what God has what things God has prepared for those who love Him. And that's what we live with. We are just so grateful for that. And we move on, and we are getting there. So thank you for listening to me. It's been a bit long, but it's been amazing throughout my walk. Particularly when I committed my life just how important prayer's been, how important the word's been, and also being part of a church. And we've been extremely lucky, fortunate, David, to have someone like you preaching the word to us each week. So thank you for that. So thank you for listening to me. And as you go out, the Lord be with you and have a good day.